Part 1, just a gym teacher? They always said the same words. Relax, you're just a gym teacher. I heard it so often that for a long time I almost believed it myself. But before we begin, if you enjoy realistic family drama, quiet revenge, and stories where karma arrives without shouting, make sure you subscribe and stay till the end, because this story doesn't explode loudly. It cuts deep. I stood outside my own house that morning, holding a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. The house looked perfect from the outside. White siding, fresh paint, a porch swing that my wife and I installed 20 years ago back when laughter still lived here. Inside, though, it wasn't my home anymore. My name is Michael Turner. I'm 62 years old. For 35 years, I worked as a high school gym teacher. I never drove luxury cars, never wore expensive watches, never talked about money. I taught kids how to stand back up after they fell. Funny thing is, no one noticed how good I got at that. It started 2 months earlier, right after my knee surgery. The doctor told me I'd need time to recover. I used a cane for a few weeks, moved slower. That was all it took. One afternoon, my son Ethan called. "Dad," he said carefully, the way people speak when they've already made up their mind, "we need to talk about your living situation." I laughed. "I live in my house." There was a pause. Then his wife's voice slipped in, smooth, sharp, practiced. "Rachel." "Michael," she said, "we're worried. You're getting older. And honestly, you've never really been good with decisions." I looked down at my knee brace. "I coached teenagers for decades," I replied. "I think I can handle a house." She sighed. "You were a gym teacher. Let's not exaggerate." That sentence changed everything. 2 weeks later, they handed me papers. Not requests, plans. Assisted living, power of attorney, temporary guardianship over my finances. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. Rachel smiled like she was already redecorating my life. "Just sign," she said. "It's for your own good." I didn't sign. That's when they stopped asking. What they didn't know, what Rachel never bothered to ask, was what I did after school all those years. They saw sweatshirts and whistles. They never saw the spreadsheets, the quiet investments, the small decisions made consistently for decades. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I stayed calm. Because when people underestimate you, they don't guard themselves. That morning, standing outside my house with my coffee, I watched Rachel pull into the driveway. She stepped out confidently, holding a folder. "Michael," she said loudly, like neighbors might be listening, "this is getting ridiculous. You can't live alone anymore." I looked at her. Then I smiled. Not because I was weak, but because the call had already been made. And Rachel had no idea that her biggest mistake was thinking a gym teacher couldn't plan long-term. End of part 1. If you're ready to see what happened after that one call, type part 2 and we'll continue. Trust me, this is only the warm-up. Part 2, the papers they thought I'd never read. Rachel liked control. You could see it in the way she spoke, never raising her voice, never rushing her words. She talked like everything around her already belonged to her, including people, including me. She sat at my kitchen table that afternoon, spreading the papers neatly, as if this were a business meeting and not my life being quietly dismantled. "Michael," she said calmly, "we've already spoken to a lawyer. This is the most responsible option." Ethan stood behind her, arms crossed. My son looked older than his 36 years. Or maybe guilt just ages people faster. I picked up the paper slowly. Assisted living placement. Temporary financial oversight. Medical power of attorney assigned to Rachel. Not Ethan. Her. She smiled when she noticed my pause. "It's standard," she said. "Given your background." I looked up. "My background?" She tilted her head. "You know, physical education." Coaching. Not exactly finance or law. That word again, gym teacher. I nodded. Inside, something settled, not anger, not sadness. Clarity. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid. Because I was counting. I counted the mornings I woke up at 5 a.m. to open the gym. The nights I stayed late running conditioning drills. The summers I worked extra shifts while Ethan was in college. I also counted something else. Every paycheck where I invested instead of upgraded. Every bonus I tucked away quietly. Every piece of advice I followed from men who never bragged but always planned. Rachel never asked how I paid off the house 10 years early. She assumed. People like her always do. The next morning I called David Keller. David and I met 28 years ago in a locker room. He was a parent. I was coaching his son. Now he runs one of the largest financial advisory firms in the state. He answered on the second ring. Michael, he said warmly. It's been a while. I need a favor, I replied. And discretion. There was a pause. Then come in today. Rachel thought she was smart because she spoke first. She didn't realize that the smartest people listen longest. At David's office, I laid everything out. The surgery. The papers. The pressure. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. They're trying to declare you incompetent, he said. Yes, I replied. Without saying the word. David nodded. And they think you won't fight. I smiled faintly. I didn't say that. What Rachel didn't know was this. My investments weren't simple savings accounts. They were layered, diversified, protected, trusts, holding companies, legal structures designed for people who plan decades ahead. David opened a folder and slid it across the desk. Michael, he said carefully, if anything, they should be worried about you. I didn't feel proud. I felt steady. For the first time in weeks. 2 days later, Rachel called. Have you thought about the papers? She asked. Yes, I replied. And, she pressed, I won't be signing. Her tone hardened. Michael, this isn't a suggestion. No, I agreed. It's a mistake. Silence. Then she laughed softly. You really don't understand how this works. I almost told her. Almost. Instead, I said, neither do you. That evening, I received an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Subject line. Notice of evaluation. They were escalating. Fast. Rachel thought momentum was on her side. She didn't know that while she was pushing, I was preparing something far more dangerous than resistance. I was preparing proof. And one photograph, just one, was going to turn her confidence into panic. End of part 2. If you want to see what that photo was, and why Rachel stopped smiling forever after she saw it. This story hasn't even reached its real weight yet. Part 3. The call that changed the balance. The evaluation notice wasn't a threat. It was a test. Rachel wanted to see how fast I'd panic. She expected tears, anger, maybe even pleading. Instead, I waited. 3 days passed. No response from me. On the 4th day, Ethan showed up alone. No Rachel. That alone told me everything. He stood in the doorway like a boy again. Not the confident man Rachel liked to parade at dinner parties. Dad, he said quietly, can we talk? I stepped aside. He didn't sit, he paced. They're saying you might not be thinking clearly, he said. This is getting complicated. I watched him carefully. Who is they, Ethan? I asked. He swallowed. Rachel's lawyer. Of course. And what do you think? I asked. He hesitated. That pause hurt more than any insult. I think maybe we rushed this, he admitted. But Rachel says it's for your protection. I nodded slowly. She also said I was just a gym teacher, I replied. Ethan flinched. She didn't mean it like that. She meant it exactly like that, I said calmly. He stopped pacing. Dad, please, he said. Just cooperate. This doesn't have to get ugly. I almost laughed. It already was. That afternoon I made the second call. Not to a lawyer. To Margaret Hughes. Margaret was a school board member when I coached. Sharp, observant, always watching who spoke and who listened. Now she sits on 3 nonprofit boards and 1 hospital foundation. She owed me nothing. But she picked up anyway. Michael, she said, surprised. What's going on? I told her everything. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, send me whatever documentation you have. I did. Within an hour, she called back. You're not the vulnerable one here, she said. But someone in that house is playing very close to the edge. That evening, Rachel sent a text. We need to finalize this tomorrow. No greeting. No courtesy. Just command. I replied with one word. Fine. The meeting was scheduled at her lawyer's office. Glass walls. Neutral colors. Designed to intimidate without shouting. Rachel arrived first, confident, dressed like success. She smiled thinly when she saw me. I'm glad you came to your senses, she said. I smiled back. I came prepared. Part 4. The photo no one was meant to see. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. Because I knew something irreversible was coming. At 9:02 a.m. the next morning, I was sitting in my car outside a quiet cafe on the edge of town. No name on the building. No cameras I could see. The kind of place people choose when they don't want to be remembered. She arrived 10 minutes late. Mid-30s. Nervous eyes. Hair pulled back too tightly like she was trying to keep herself together. She didn't order anything. She slid into the booth across from me and placed her phone face down on the table. You have to understand, she whispered, I'm not doing this for revenge. I know, I said. You're doing it to survive. Her shoulders dropped. She's dangerous, the woman said. Rachel isn't just manipulative, she's meticulous. She keeps people close until they're useful, then destroys them quietly. I said nothing. She unlocked her phone and turned it toward me. The photo wasn't dramatic at first glance. No blood, no weapons, just Rachel. In my bedroom, standing beside my dresser, one hand inside the drawer where I kept my documents, the other holding her phone. Time-stamped, 2 weeks before the evaluation notice. My chest tightened, but I didn't react. There's more, the woman said. She swiped. Another photo. Rachel photographing my safe. Zoomed in on the keypad. Then a video. Short, silent. Rachel on the phone. Laughing. I'll make him look confused, she mouthed. The court will eat it up. I felt something cold settle in my bones. How did you get this? I asked. I installed the camera, she replied. She asked me to. Said she needed leverage. Leverage against her own father-in-law. I paid for her coffee she never drank. As she stood to leave, she paused. She already has a backup plan, she said quietly. If this fails, she'll turn Ethan against you completely. I nodded. She already tried, I said. That afternoon, I sent one email. Just one. To a forensic accountant Margaret had recommended. Attached everything. By evening, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Rachel didn't call. Ethan did. His voice was shaking. "Dad," he said, "Rachel says you're spying on her. She says you're setting traps." "Did she mention my bedroom?" I asked. Silence. "Did she mention the safe?" I continued. His breathing changed. "You told her you installed cameras," I said calmly. "But you didn't." "No," he whispered. "She did." That night, Rachel showed up unannounced. She didn't know. She stormed in. "You crossed a line," she snapped. I sat at the table waiting. "You invaded my privacy," she continued. "You're trying to make me look unstable." I slid my phone across the table. The paused frame showed her face. In my bedroom. Her mouth open mid-laugh. Her color drained instantly. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. I leaned forward. "You walked into my house," I said quietly. "You photographed my safe. You plotted my removal. And you filmed yourself doing it." She grabbed the phone. I pulled it back. "You don't own this," I said. "And you don't own me." Her composure cracked. "You think this will save you?" she hissed. "I can still destroy you." I stood. "You already tried," I said. "Now it's my turn to decide how loud this gets." She left without another word. But the damage was done. Because the next morning Ethan came back. And this time, he brought a suitcase. "I'm staying with you," he said. "I need space from her." I nodded. Behind him, Rachel sat in her car across the street, watching, knowing, and realizing for the first time that the man she dismissed as just a gym teacher had quietly built the one thing she never could control: the truth. But the story wasn't finished. Because in 48 hours, Rachel would make one final mistake, and it would cost her everything she thought she owned. End of part 4. This is where the courtroom enters the story, and silence stops being an option. Part 5, when silence becomes evidence. The letter arrived by courier. Cream envelope. Legal seal, no return address. Rachel's handwriting on the back. She wanted me to notice. I didn't open it right away. I already knew what it was. By noon, my attorney, Margaret, was sitting across from me in her office. Glasses perched low on her nose, scanning the document with surgical calm. "She's filing an emergency motion," Margaret said. "Incompetency. Immediate guardianship. Asset freeze." I exhaled slowly. "She moved fast," I said. "She had to," Margaret replied. "Because once the evidence you sent becomes part of the record, her window closes." I leaned back. "Then let's open it." The motion was aggressive. Claims of confusion, selective memory lapses, unsafe living conditions. And the final line that made Margaret laugh, actually laugh. "Respondent poses a financial risk to himself and others." "Others," I said. "She's projecting," Margaret replied. Classic. I slid my phone across the desk. "She won't be laughing when this goes public." Margaret watched the video once, then twice. Then she closed the file. "This," she said, "ends her." Court was scheduled for Friday. 3 days. Rachel spent those days exactly how Margaret predicted. Calling everyone. Mutual friends. Extended family. Even my old colleagues. She painted herself as the exhausted wife protecting her husband from a manipulative old man who refused to let go of control. She didn't know one thing. The court had already subpoenaed the raw footage. Friday morning, I arrived early. Not nervous. Focused. Rachel sat 3 rows ahead, perfectly composed. Neutral colors. Soft makeup. the image of concern. She didn't look back. Ethan sat beside me. He hadn't spoken to her in 2 days. The judge began without ceremony. "Mr. Hale," she said, "you understand the seriousness of these allegations?" "Yes, Your Honor." Rachel's attorney stood. He spoke for 12 minutes. Charts, medical jargon, carefully edited statements. Rachel dabbed her eyes at the right moments. Then Margaret stood. She said one sentence. "Your Honor, may we play Exhibit C?" Rachel turned. Just slightly. The courtroom screen flickered to life. The video played. No sound. Just Rachel entering my bedroom, opening drawers, photographing documents. Then the second clip, her mouth forming words. "I'll make him look confused." Gasps rippled across the room. Rachel's attorney froze. The judge leaned forward. "Pause," she said. Rachel stood. "This is illegal," she said sharply. "This footage was obtained without consent." Margaret didn't move. "Incorrect," she said. "The camera was installed by Ms. Pierce herself, on my client's property, without his knowledge." The judge's eyes narrowed. Rachel sat down slowly. For the first time, she looked small. The judge turned to her attorney. "Counsel," she said, "explain why your client was documenting the private residence of the man she claims is incompetent." He opened his mouth, closed it. The ruling was swift. Motion denied. Guardianship dismissed. Protective order granted in my favor. But the judge wasn't finished. "Ms. Pierce," she said, "the court is referring this matter for criminal review." Rachel's head snapped up. "Your Honor." "Enough," the judge said. The gavel struck. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. Rachel pushed past them without a word. Ethan stood beside me. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I swear I didn't." I put a hand on his shoulder. "I know," I said. "That's why this ends here for you, but not for her." Because as she reached her car, Rachel turned, and for the first time, there was fear in her eyes. Not anger, not arrogance. Fear. She knew the truth had outgrown her lies. And she knew something else too. The man she tried to erase had just reclaimed his voice. But the reckoning wasn't finished. Because next came the audit. And that would expose what Rachel had been hiding long before she ever stepped into my bedroom. End of part 5. This is where money starts talking, and secrets stop staying buried. Part 6, Follow the Money. Rachel disappeared for 2 days after the hearing. No calls, no texts, no public appearances. People like her don't vanish because they're ashamed. They vanish because they're calculating. The audit began quietly. That's how the most dangerous things always begin, without noise. Margaret warned me not to expect fireworks. Real damage happens in spreadsheets, she said. Not courtrooms. She wasn't wrong. The forensic accountants worked methodically. Every account, every transfer, every shell company Rachel had ever touched. What they found wasn't dramatic. It was worse. Consistent. Money had been moving for years. Small amounts at first, amounts designed not to trigger alerts. Then larger ones. Always routed through entities Rachel controlled. Always justified with language like consulting fees or estate management expenses. One pattern stood out. Every time my health record was updated, every doctor's visit, every prescription, a transfer followed within weeks. She was preparing, Margaret said quietly, For the moment you couldn't push back. I stared at the numbers. So she didn't just plan to control me, I said. She planned to wait me out. Margaret nodded. That's not caretaking, she said. That's harvesting. Ethan struggled the most during this phase. He wanted to believe there was still a misunderstanding. There wasn't. One night, he knocked on my door holding a stack of printed bank statements. These were sent to my email, he said. I didn't even know these accounts existed. They weren't meant for you, I replied. He sat down heavily. She used my name, he whispered. My marriage. My trust. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only honest response. Rachel finally called on the third day. Not angry. Not defensive. Careful. Michael, she said softly, we need to talk privately. There's nothing private left, I replied. I can explain everything, she insisted. This has gone too far. I almost smiled. No, I said calmly. It's finally gone far enough. She inhaled sharply. You don't understand what you're doing, she said. If this continues, people will get hurt. I understand exactly what I'm doing, I replied. I'm stopping you. She hung up. That afternoon, Margaret called with an update. They've uncovered a secondary fund, she said. Hidden offshore. How much, I asked. She paused. Enough to explain why she was so confident. I closed my eyes. Rachel hadn't just underestimated me. She'd gambled everything on the belief that I'd stay quiet. The next day, Ethan confronted her. Not at home. At her office. He told me later he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I saw the accounts, he said to her. All of them. Rachel tried to deflect, then deny, then she cried. Finally, she said the truth. I was protecting us, she insisted. You would have lost everything if I hadn't stepped in. Ethan shook his head. You didn't protect us, he said. You used us. She slapped him. Once, not hard, but deliberate. That was the moment Ethan stopped defending her. He came back that night with red eyes and steady hands. I want out, he said. Legally, completely. I nodded. I'll support you, I said. But you have to accept what comes with that. I know, he replied. I'm ready. Rachel's attorney resigned the following morning. No explanation, just a formal notice. Margaret smiled when she read it. That's never a good sign for the client, she said. By the end of the week, the prosecutor's office had everything they needed. Financial abuse, elder exploitation, fraud. Rachel wasn't arrested. Not yet, but the walls were closing in. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. That night I stood in my study and looked at the shelves Rachel once mocked. Old books, she'd said. Outdated thinking. I ran my fingers along the spines. These books taught me patience, discipline, endurance, the very things she lacked. Rachel thought power came from speed, from pressure, from intimidation. She never learned the most important lesson I taught teenagers for decades. The strongest people don't rush. They wait until the other side gets tired of pretending, and Rachel was getting very tired. And a part 6. In the next part, Rachel makes her last move, and Ethan is forced to choose where his loyalty truly lies. Part 7, the last move she had left. Rachel didn't run. That surprised everyone. People like her usually disappear when the walls close in. New cities, new names, new stories. But Rachel stayed. Not because she was brave. Because she believed she still had one card left to play. Ethan. It started with a message. Not to me. To him. We need to talk. Just us, no lawyers. No accusations. I deserve that much. Ethan showed it to me without saying a word. I didn't tell him what to do. This wasn't my decision anymore. I'll go, he said finally. But not alone. I nodded. Take your time. They met at the park where they used to walk on Sundays. The place where Rachel once posted smiling photos online, captioned family first. She looked different now. Not unkempt, not broken, just smaller, as if the confidence that once filled her had leaked out slowly. You did this to me, she said quietly as Ethan approached. He didn't sit. I didn't, he replied. You did. She flinched. I loved you, she said quickly. Everything I did was for us. For you, he corrected. She shook her head. Your father manipulated you. He turned you against me. Ethan laughed once. A short, humorless sound. No, he said. He stopped protecting your lies. That hurt her more than anger ever could. Rachel changed tactics. She always did. I'm pregnant, she said suddenly. The words hung in the air. Ethan froze. What? She nodded, eyes glistening. I just found out. I didn't tell anyone because I was scared. Ethan stared at her, heart pounding. For a moment the world narrowed. Then he said something Rachel didn't expect. Show me. Her expression flickered. What? Show me the test. The doctor. Something, he said calmly. Rachel's lips parted, then closed. I didn't bring it. He nodded slowly. That's what I thought. She stood up abruptly. You're choosing him, she snapped. After everything, you're choosing him. Ethan didn't raise his voice. I'm choosing the truth, he said. For the first time in my life. She laughed bitterly. You think this ends well for you? She asked. They'll drag my name through the dirt. Your name too. I know, he replied. But at least it will be honest. That evening, Ethan came home quietly. He didn't say much. Just sat across from me and stared at the table. She tried to trap me, he said finally. With fear. With guilt. With lies. I nodded. And? And it didn't work, he said. Because for once, I wasn't afraid to lose her. That sentence told me everything. The next morning, Rachel made her final move. She filed a civil suit against me. Defamation, emotional distress, elder manipulation. It was desperate. And desperate moves leave fingerprints everywhere. Margaret reviewed it in 10 minutes. She has no case, she said. But she wants delay. She wants leverage. Will it work, I asked. Margaret shook her head. No, she said. But it will force her to testify. I smiled faintly. That's all I needed. When Rachel received notice of the deposition, she panicked. She called Ethan, then me, then Margaret. No one answered. By nightfall, her name appeared in a quiet press release. Investigation expands into suspected elder financial exploitation. Not loud, not flashy, but lethal. Ethan stood beside me as we read it. She's finished, he said softly. No, I replied. She's being seen. There's a difference. That night, Rachel sent one final message. Not to threaten, not to manipulate. Just 4 words. I never thought you'd fight. I didn't reply, because she was wrong. I hadn't fought. I had stood still, and let the truth walk forward on its own. In Part 8, everything concludes. The legal outcome. Ethan's final reckoning, and the legacy I choose to protect. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about what survives when lies don't. Part 8, when the truth finally spoke. Rachel testified on a Monday. Gray suit. No jewelry. No confidence left to hide behind. The courtroom wasn't full. Truth rarely needs an audience. She sat across from me, hands folded tightly, eyes fixed straight ahead. Not once did she look at Ethan. That told me everything I needed to know. The prosecutor didn't rush her. That was the mistake Rachel had always made, believing speed was power. Mrs. Pierce, the prosecutor asked calmly, "Can you explain why funds were transferred from Mr. Turner's account shortly after his medical visits?" Rachel hesitated. "I was managing expenses," she said. "Healthcare is costly. And the offshore accounts," the prosecutor continued. "The shell companies? The video footage taken inside his private bedroom." Rachel swallowed. Her lawyer shifted. "This line of questioning is necessary," the judge interrupted. Rachel's composure cracked. "I was protecting the family," she said sharply. He didn't understand modern finances. He was confused. I didn't react. I didn't need to. The judge looked at her steadily. "Confusion does not justify theft," he said. Then came the question Rachel feared most. "Why?" the prosecutor asked. "Did you attempt to have Mr. Turner declared incompetent?" Rachel's eyes flicked toward Ethan for the first time. He didn't move. "I was afraid," she said quietly. "Afraid he'd lose everything." "No," the prosecutor said gently. "You were afraid he wouldn't." The courtroom went still. When it was over, the judge ruled without delay. Guardianship attempt dismissed permanently. Civil claims denied. Assets returned. Criminal charges proceeding. Rachel didn't cry. She just sat there. Empty. Outside, Ethan finally spoke. "I don't feel relief," he said. "I feel clear." "That's better," I replied. "Relief fades. Clarity stays." He nodded. "I'll testify again if needed." "I know," I said. "But whatever happens next, you don't owe me anything." He looked at me then. "Yes," he said, "I do. I owe you honesty." That was enough. Weeks passed. Quietly. Rachel's name appeared in filings, not headlines. Her world shrank the way it deserved to, slowly and publicly, without spectacle. I rewrote my will. Not out of anger. Out of wisdom. Trust's oversight boundaries. Love with structure. One evening, Ethan and I sat on the porch. He stared out at the street. "She really thought you were weak," he said softly. I smiled. "No," I replied. "She thought strength only looked one way." He laughed quietly. "She was wrong." "Yes," I said. "She was." I went inside later and opened the drawer where the photo was kept. I didn't destroy it. I didn't frame it. I closed the drawer again. Some truths aren't trophies. They're reminders. Rachel once mocked me, called me just a gym teacher. But what she never understood was that coaching isn't about muscles. It's about discipline, patience, and knowing when to wait for the other side to collapse under its own weight. They tried to take my voice. They tried to rewrite my reality. They failed, not because I shouted, but because I stood still and let the truth do the work. And a part 8. If you're ready, we'll move to part 9, where the criminal case reaches its turning point. Ethan faces one final test, and Rachel realizes what she truly lost. Part 9, The Cost of Being Seen. Rachel was arrested on a Thursday afternoon. Not in handcuffs at dawn. Not in front of cameras. At her office. Quietly. That's how real consequences arrive, without drama, without warning. Ethan found out from a notification on his phone. He stared at the screen for a long time before handing it to me. "I didn't think it would feel like this," he said. I read the headline once. Former financial executive charged in elder exploitation case. No name in bold letters, just truth stated plainly. "That's because you loved her," I said. "Love doesn't disappear just because lies do." He nodded. "I still feel responsible," he admitted. "You are," I replied. "But not for her crimes, for what you do next." The criminal case moved faster than Rachel expected. Once the evidence crossed a certain threshold, momentum took over. Financial abuse, unauthorized surveillance, attempted coercive control, each charge stacked neatly. No theatrics, just structure. Rachel's new attorney requested a meeting. Margaret attended on my behalf. She returned with one sentence. She wants a plea. I wasn't surprised. People who fear exposure more than punishment always do. Rachel's conditions were clear. Reduced sentence, full cooperation, asset forfeiture. But there was one request she insisted on. She wanted to speak to Ethan one last time. I didn't tell him what to do. I never had. "I'll go," he said after a long pause. "But I won't let her rewrite anything." "That's all that matters," I replied. They met in a monitored room. No touching, no raised voices. Rachel looked smaller than ever, stripped of power, stripped of certainty. "I never meant to destroy you," she said quietly. Ethan didn't respond. "I thought I was smarter than everyone," she continued. "Including your father." Ethan finally spoke. "You weren't smarter," he said. "You were just louder." She flinched. "I lost everything," she whispered. He shook his head. "No," he said. "You gave it away." She asked him one final question. "Do you hate me?" Ethan thought carefully. "No," he said. "But I don't trust you. And that's worse for you than hate." Rachel closed her eyes. That was the moment she understood. After the meeting, Ethan came home silent. We sat together without speaking. Finally, he said, "She never saw you as a person. Just an obstacle." "That's how predators see," I replied. "Not with malice, just entitlement." He exhaled slowly. "I don't want to become that." "You won't," I said. "Because you stopped when it mattered." The plea deal was accepted. Rachel would serve time. Not long, but long enough. Her professional licenses were revoked. Her assets seized. Her reputation quietly dismantled. She would leave prison with freedom, but without power. And for someone like her, that was the real sentence. That night, Ethan stood at my door. "I want to start over," he said. "Not money. Not control. Just right." I studied him. "Then start by being patient," I said. "With yourself." He nodded. "I learned that from a gym teacher," he said softly. I smiled. As I turned off the light later, I realized something. Rachel thought being exposed would destroy her. She never understood that being seen is only painful when you've built your life on hiding. In Part 10 final, the story comes to rest. Ethan steps fully into who he has become, and I decide what legacy truly means. This isn't the loud ending. It's the honest one. Part 10. What they never took from me. Life didn't snap back into place after Rachel's sentencing. It settled, slowly, naturally, the way things do when the noise finally stops. Ethan moved into a small apartment across town, not because he had to, but because he wanted distance from everything that reminded him of who he had been when he stopped paying attention. We didn't talk every day. We didn't need to. Trust doesn't return on a schedule. It rebuilds itself quietly through consistency. A month later, I returned to the high school gym for the first time in years. The floor still smelled like varnish and rubber. A few teachers recognized me. "Coach Turner," one of them said, smiling. "Good to see you." "Coach." Not just a gym teacher. I stood there watching a group of kids struggle through drills, complaining, laughing, failing, and trying again. That's when it hit me. Everything Rachel underestimated about me was forged right here. Patience, discipline, reading people under pressure. You don't learn that in boardrooms. You learn it on gym floors. Ethan came by later that evening. He looked different. Not lighter, clearer. "I turned down a job today," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "That's new." He smiled faintly. It didn't feel right. Too fast, too familiar. I nodded. "Good instincts," I said. "I finally understand something," he continued. "Power without accountability turns people into monsters." I leaned back in my chair. "Now you're thinking like a man who's been burned," I replied. "That's not weakness. That's education." He laughed softly. Rachel sent one final letter from prison. No excuses, no manipulation. Just a single paragraph. I thought control meant safety. I was wrong. "You didn't destroy me. You showed me who I was." I folded it and placed it in the drawer. Not with anger, with acceptance. I updated my will one last time. Clear boundaries, clear responsibilities. Ethan would inherit, but not blindly. Oversight wasn't punishment. It was protection. For him. For the future. People still sometimes ask how it felt to be underestimated. I tell them the truth. It felt like freedom. Because when people think you're small, they stop watching closely. And when they stop watching, that's when you see everything. Rachel mocked me, called me just a gym teacher. But what she never understood was that I spent my life teaching people how to fall and how to get back up stronger. They tried to silence me. They tried to erase my agency. They failed, not because I fought harder, but because I stood steady. If there's one lesson in all of this, it's simple. Never underestimate quiet discipline. Never mistake kindness for weakness. And never assume someone's value by their title. Because sometimes, the strongest people don't need to announce who they are. They just wait and let the truth do the talking. The end.